Caregivers today are asking, what is respite care? I'm here to explain what respite care is, share two examples to help illustrate why respite care can help you, and we'll also talk about some benefits. So first, what on earth is respite care? Well, if you look it up in the dictionary, it's a term used mostly by the healthcare industry to explain the need to family caregivers to take time off of caregiving. The problem is that most caregivers aren't familiar with the word respite, nor do they know what it means. So when healthcare providers are saying, you need respite, caregivers are saying, what's that? And honestly, the first time I heard the word, even I had to look it up, and I work in the healthcare industry. I'm Pamela D Wilson. My website is PamelaDWilson.com. On there is a lot of hope, help, and support for caregivers and aging adults. So let's look at the technical definition of respite. It comes from a word that means you need a break before you're going to go do something that's hard. Or it's a negative connotation saying, I need time away from this, which is true when you get into caregiving. Now the problem is healthcare uses it all the time, in addition to all these fancy acronyms like ADLs and IDALs and CHF, and the family caregivers don't understand what these words mean, and many people are hesitant to ask because they don't want to appear uneducated. Caregivers, what I can tell you, based on my 20 years of experience in the caregiving field and training a lot of staff, it's the questions that you don't ask that can get you into the most trouble. There are no silly questions, and if you don't know what something means, don't be afraid to ask. So let's talk about the idea of respite and what it means to real, normal people. Breathing space, an intermission, like you go to a concert and there's an intermission, or you go to a play and there's an intermission. Or it's like recess when you were a kid at school, so you could go out and play for a half hour and then come back and focus on your studies. It's playtime, it's time out, it's downtime, it's a weekend off. Why the healthcare system has to use the word respite, I have no idea. They could use the word take a short break, take some time off, take some time for you. So why is it that caregivers keep going and going and going and never take a break? Well, if you're a caregiver, that is obvious, right? You don't have time. You're too busy. There's too much to do. You can't possibly find the time to take a break. So I want to share two stories that might give you some insights into a broader understanding of respite. And both of these are from a proverb, and you can actually look them up. I'm going to give you two names. One is a scholar and one is a Zen master. I'm going to spell these because I probably can't pronounce them. They're in Chinese. Tokusan and Ryutan. So if you look them up, you'll see that I've changed the story a little bit to apply to caregiving. So here we go. Caregiver shows up at the house of a very wise person who knows everything. And the wise person says, well, let's sit down and let me pour you a cup of tea, which is a Chinese tradition. So the wise person starts pouring the tea, and the tea overflows the cup and it goes into the saucer. Now the caregiver who showed up is looking at this and they're thinking, And the caregiver says to the wise man, do you realize that you poured my cup of tea, but it's overflowing onto the saucer? The wise man pauses and says, yes, your cup is full. It's full of observations, and yet you're here to seek wisdom. Go away and come back when you're open-minded and willing to learn. So what is the lesson in that simple story? The lesson is everything that we learn and see and hear is filtered up here in our brain. And we make all of these assumptions about what we're seeing and what we're hearing and whether it's real or not and whether we should believe it or not. But the fact is that when we make those assumptions, we actually become biased against outside information. So this caregiver went to see this very wise person, and all of a sudden, before even the conversation began, started judging and made assumptions about how the person poured the tea and started putting everything into a box, into the context that the caregiver had. This relates to the reason why caregivers may not join a support group or take an online caregiving course that can save you a lot of time, teach you tips to be a better caregiver, because your framework is, well, I already know what I need to know. There can't be anything possibly else out there. What does this person have to teach me? And so the limitation there is that if we don't take time for ourselves, if our cup is always overflowing and there's always so much to do and we can never take a break, then our brain never really disconnects from everything that we have to do. So we don't realize that there are options out there and that there is information out there that might be helpful to you and the person that you're caring for and your family. Caregivers live in this bubble of caregiving because you're so busy, and you don't see options and the short-term and the long-term consequences. And this happens to all of us, not only in caregiving, but in other parts of our life. So don't feel like you're alone in this. We've all been there. We've all experienced being stuck in this bubble of our emotions and our thoughts in the situation that we're in. The second story also relates to drinking tea. And the saying of this one is, you can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. Caregivers, when you keep doing and doing and doing, you're eventually going to burn out physically and mentally, become resentful and angry, and if you're watching this, you may already be there. This answers the question of what is respite. It's very simple, and I'll say this humorously, but start having a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, a soda, something every day to give yourself time to think. Find ways to take a break. Investigate care services that might be helpful to you. Now, you might be saying, I don't have time, I don't have money. Well, think about this. What happens when your loved one ends up repeatedly in the hospital and you get the bill from Medicare or the insurance company that's $500 or $1,000? What happens when something else happens and you get an expensive medical bill? Taking that course that might have been a couple $100 that you didn't have time to take and you didn't have money to take, but you have money to pay for emergency care and accidents and hospitalizations and nursing home stays and copays and all of this. That little time for yourself to improve your care situation can save you a lot of worry, time, and effort. It's also important that you talk to your loved ones and set boundaries to say, I need a break. I need some time off. The benefits of time off, short breaks, recess, intermission, playtime. You can manage family relationships better. You can find your happy place and stay there for 10, 20, 30 minutes a day, maybe a few hours a week. You can create a life outside of caregiving, reestablish friendship relationships and social connections that are so good for your health. And you can take time to plan for the unexpected by investigating caregiving services and attending caregiver courses and joining a caregiver support group. So fill that cup of tea to the halfway mark. Don't leave it empty. Don't have it be overfilled. And make time for yourself. Take some short breaks. Recognize the benefits of what respite are. I'm Pamela D Wilson. Please share my website, PamelaDWilson.com, with other people that you know who are looking for hope, help, and support. I offer one-to-one caregiver consultations by telephone or virtually nationwide, and I also have online caregiver support classes, my weekly podcast, The Caring Generation, articles in my caregiving blog, so much helpful information in addition to all of these videos. Share these videos with people that you know who are looking for hope, help, and support. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you again soon in another video.